I was just in the cafe. I cycled up here from work and I got punch on the way, and I wanted a cup of tea, so I went into the cafe and someone, Alex, where's... There she is. There was somebody that said, oh, hello, I'm coming to your talk. I'm like, yes, it's going to be amazing. I wasn't quite prepared for so many people, so thank you very much for turning up. I thought, why do? I could rabbit on about myself for hours on end, but I thought what I'd do is if I just sort of kind of introduce myself, what I do, what we do as a business, and then I'll do a bit of a short biography, but it'll probably go on for a bit, and then and I've got some slides, and then we're going to have questions and answers afterwards. I kind of think, like, I don't know what you think, but I'm quite happy for people to interrupt while I'm talking, and so on, you know. So anything you want to say, we can just go off on tangents and chat about anything. So do feel, if you want to just say, oh, hang on a minute, you know, what about this or what about that? Then just shout out, and I can answer any questions as we go along. I've got some bits and bobs. I've got some jewellery, which is beautifully displayed in plastic bags, and I've got there's like some packaging samples, and this is our press book for, I wish they hadn't, it's really heavy when you're cycling, it's really heavy, but this is just so far this year, I think, or I'm not sure, it goes up to May this year, so that's a press book. And I've also, again, because I was cycling, I didn't want to go so much, I just copied a few pages from my sketchbook, just to give you an idea of that. So there's bits and bobs up here to see. We can pass them down, you can come up at the end and have a look. And I've probably forgotten lots of things, but we might as well get started. Oh, you know, I'd like to know, because you look like quite a mixed bunch, how many here are from Holts Academy? And then, so the others, are you mainly jewellery makers or studying and that kind of thing? Yeah, sort of in the middle. Because I think you know, you want to get something out of it, so there's no point in me just blabbing on about, you know, doing a biographical thing. I think it'd be much more interesting if you've got actual specific questions and you know, and there are particular things that you want to ask about, then you'll probably get much more use out of that and actually take something away from this evening that will be useful to you. Anyway, so I'll get cracking. I've done a little PowerPoint presentation. As you know, my name's Alex Monroe. It's my name on the company name is the same as my name. Because basically when I left uni, I just started making jewellery and that was my name. So it's a slightly odd thing because we're now quite a well-established business and we sell in lots of places, lots of jewellery. So I have to sort of distinguish between Alex Monroe, the brand, and me, if you see what I mean. And then sometimes I use the term we. By that I don't mean like I've turned into the Queen or Margaret Thatcher. What I mean is that actually we're a really close business. I think there's about 26 of us in the business, and it very much is like a teamwork thing. So of course it's my business and I'm sort of in charge and I sort of lead it and take direction, and I'm the designer. So I design all the jewellery and I hand make all the new samples. So all the new collections I design and hand make, and then it goes over to other people to make. But things have changed a bit recently because the business has grown. So we have a lot of young people who are much better who've probably got a better eye at what's fashionable and what people want to wear. So for example, I might come up with a concept for a collection and make the things, and typically I'll stick the things on a chain, which is a bit boring, and often some of the young people at work will go, hey, why don't we try this and why don't we use that, and so that I'll get a lot of help and contributions from everyone at work to sort of to make the jewellery a little bit more wearable and more desirable for the women that are going to buy it. So that's me. I've just included kind of, this piece is the most impractical piece of jewellery in the history of jewellery. Japanese people can wear it because they somehow seem to waft through life elegantly and with beautiful things. But if anyone anywhere else in the world wears it, it catches on your scarf and scratches your baby's face and does all sorts of damage. But it's quite nice because it's a fairly sort of signature piece insofar as there's a story behind it. It's a little bit cute and quirky, but it's not just a sort of saccharine, sugary piece. There's a little bit more behind the piece than just being sweet and sort of pretty. By the way, when I went through art school, it was very, very, very unpopular to be commercial, to be interested in fashion, and pretty was probably one of the biggest insults you could give to a piece of work you were making. So I suppose I was quite contrarian. I was very definitely took the decision that actually there's nothing, not only was there nothing to be ashamed of making something that was pretty, and something that was commercial and something that was fashionable. Actually, I thought, well, actually, these are all good things. I think I read Grayson Perry recently said that in the art world the greatest insult now was calling something good taste, because it's somehow sort of bad taste was so much cooler than good taste. And I suppose in some ways it was like that back in the day when I was at uni, that doing something that was commercial was very much a dirty work, and also fashionable was quite a dirty work. But so that's a sort of signature sort of piece. Here's another piece that's very typical of what I do. It's made. It's actually a piece I did for Burt's Bees to raise money for the bee research charity. And it's made. I handmade the piece, so I handmade the bee and handmade all the flowers and constructed the piece. And then I chopped it into 3 separate rings and chopped the bee off or unsoldered the bee, and then got it cast in 3 separate pieces, and the bee cast separately. So when we make it, we solder together the 3 pieces and solder the bee on, and then we set the stones, and then we gold plate it, and then we rhodium plate over the silver bits. But that's these are sort of things that we're doing at the moment. These are some silver chrysanthemum earrings, which is quite sort of typical of the sort of work that we make at the moment. Oh, I pressed it twice on the push left. Sorry, it's going to take a little. I have to wait a while for the machine to catch up with us. At the moment, I'm going to see if I can make it. Oh, it's doing something funny. This is my workshop in Kennington, Elephant Castle. So we're I think in total we're about 26 people, and it's spread between 2 sites. This is my old workshop in Kennington, Elephant Castle. Just to give you an idea of what it's like. It's a pretty messy kind of place, because I've been there for ages, and you've sort of stack rubbish in every corner, and after 20-something years it gets fairly full. So I left uni in 1986. I was, as I said, I was very keen at uni to sort of go against what they were all saying was to sort of make these incredibly sort of worthy conceptual artistic pieces. I very much enjoyed I wanted to be a maker, so I loved making jewellery, and and also I knew pretty much from the start that what interested me was making things that people were going to buy and use. But because of the way things were in those days, after you'd been to art school, the normal route was that you would get a workshop and you would make jewellery and you give it to a gallery or be asked to submit some pieces for an exhibition, and the gallery would then normally sort of draw somewhere, and then sort of 3 months later you'd spend a lot of time chasing them to get it back, and it would all be tarnished. And I didn't really see the point in that very much. Something that's informed my work right from the start is that I come from absolute middle of nowhere in Suffolk, and I was sort of born and brought up very much a country boy, and it was only when I got to be about sort of 14 that I realised that it was a dump and I wanted to move to London, and I was like one of those part-time punk rockers, so I think I managed to get to London when I was 17. I dropped out of school quite early and got myself up to the King's Road as soon as I could. But that, I think that's a sort of typical thing you reject. At that age you want to reject everything, but it was a little bit later that I realised that it's all very much informed the work that I'm doing at the moment. This is, when I was at uni, because I like making things, I very much liked silversmithing and I liked raising, so most of the work I was on, I found I was quite organic about it, so I loved hammering and doing quite big pieces. This pot was probably about this big, so I used to drive everyone mad because I'd actually roll in the sheets of metal. I'd have to roll them in and then start hammering, and I'd spend a term hammering away, and they give everyone great headaches every day. But I loved the organic process of making things. Here are some more examples of the sort of work that I was doing at university. After I left university, I got my first workshop in some studios called 401.5 Workshops, which is still there on the Wandsworth Road. And it was quite a good community of art school graduates. It was very much a gallery-based place where craftspeople made things and sent them out to galleries for exhibitions. So this was the sort of thing I was making. That's an etched fish in a box. In some ways, I can see, sort of looking back at it now, it does have a little bit of sense of humour. It's sort of like a dead fish skeleton in a box. But I think that piece was about that big, and it was the sort of thing that I would be making speculatively, and then galleries would come and look at around the workshop and say, oh, can we have this piece for an exhibition? These are more pieces that I was making when I was in my early days there. I also loved making sundials, so this is one of my early sundial drawings, and I tried to make sort of... I'm sorry, I'm in the way, aren't I? This is one of my early inventions that was sort of like a navigational thing, so you could actually find out where you were in the world by taking all your readings and having a little compass in it and things like that. So it was like you got iPhones now, so people don't need these things anymore. As it was actually more, I was always interested in fashion. Actually, I wanted to do fashion at uni, but I didn't get into any fashion colleges, and the reason I went to the Sir John Cass to do that course was because I was living in Ipswich, and I just wanted to come to London, and it was September or something, and you get the clearance places, and there was a place free on the Mile End Road. I thought it was on the Mile End Road, and I remember that we'd occasionally driven into London from Ipswich down the A12, down the Mile End Road, and my mother always used to say to me, as we drove down the Mile End Road, she always used to say, if you carry on the way you're going, don't get your exams, you're going to end up in a place like this. So I got, just to spite her, I thought, yeah, I'll go. So it's kind of very coincidental that I ended up going to the Cass to do a jewellery course. But having left uni, and I was making these pieces in galleries that weren't selling, of course you don't have the facilities in your own little workshop that you have in a lovely university. So I couldn't make my big pots. So what I did was I made some small ones, and these were brooches. I think they were about that sort of big, and they're in patinated etched brass. And I actually found it that I could sell them because they were much cheaper, and rents need to be paid. So pretty soon I did my first collection of jewellery. And this really reminds me of the kind of good old days, but these pieces are all hollow. So it's all hollowware, so I'd hand make the whole thing, and they'd have little holes in so that you can do the final soldering. I'd make them about this sort of big in silver, so I'd make them all by hand, and then I'd etch them and polish them, and then I took them. I went to Hampstead and went around some shops in Hampstead, and there was a shop, I think it was called XYZ in Hampstead, and they liked them. It was a clothing shop who sold a bit of jewellery. And they liked them, and they bought, you know, like 5 or 6 pieces. And I remember I got a cheque for, I think it was 60 quid, which is like the most money I'd ever got. And I went back to my workshops, and me and Jason went and got really drunk for about 3 days. But I kind of thought, yeah, this works for me, because it's you know, I can make something, I can sell it, get paid for it, and it's in the shop, and they sold in the shop. You know, people came in and bought them, and people were wearing them. And I thought, yeah, this is. I think that was really the time in which I thought, yeah, I definitely want to make jewellery that people buy and then wear. And I think I also saw probably the route that I was going to do that was going to be through the fashion, more sort of fashion industry shops. I did shortly after graduating from uni, I got onto a course at the Royal College of Art, which was called Business for Designers. And it was a good course. What we did is we wrote we had to write a business plan, and then we presented it to several bank managers to borrow £1,000. So it essentially gave me the ability to borrow £1,000 when I started out. And this was sort of happening at the same time. And while I was writing my business plan, I pretty much realised that what I wanted to do was I liked making things, and I liked people buying them and wearing them. So I knew that I wanted to make things that I was going to sell in shops, probably fashion shops, and I wanted to make them at a sort of affordable price. I always thought I wanted people to be able to come in and buy them. So I had no interest in Bond Street or in perhaps a sort of a gallery that might have a, you know, sort of feather hanging in a steel cage on a rubber ball, and it was called, you know, Freedom or something. You know, that wasn't. I like that other people do that, but I knew very much that wasn't for me at all. So I kind of did this business plan, and I thought that's really what I want to do is make jewelry and sell it. And so that's what I did. So I having sold this collection. Oh, that's a classic, probably 1986 photo of the sort of size thing. I mean, it looks so dated, but I love that picture because it is so dated. It kind of reminds me of what. So that was actually a photo in a magazine. So I started to poke it around some magazines as well and say, look what I'm making, and they put it in some magazines. And then, having done that collection, I needed to do another one. So this was my fish collection, which I think has got some elements of. When I see it now, it's all big and clunky. I don't think technically it's not very, very brilliant, but it's like slightly humorous, and it's not now, but at the time it was reasonably fashionable, and it was kind of quite affordable for people. That I made and I sold, and then I needed to do another collection. So I did this. This was probably like, you know, before Christmas or something. I did a sort of angel collection. And again, it's got that sort of, you know, I wanted to do Superman as an angel, so there's kind of with the crosses and things. I was quite into my drawing in churches and things at that time. So I started, you know, I was making jewellery, I was making a collection of jewellery, I was hooking it around the shops and selling it, and they were selling it through. And then I needed to do some new stuff, so I needed to make a new collection. And so I went to join in with the London fashion shows, and in those days they were in Olympia, Elscourt Olympia, and it was brilliant because the fashion shows were at the same time as the lingerie shows. So as a kind of 21-year-old bloke, or however old I was, I had my stand, you'd sit there and all the lingerie models would be wandering around sort of showing off their things. I used to have a lovely week sitting there with a big grin on my face, but I didn't really sell very much jewellery. But, you know, I was on the circuit, I was doing the fashion shows, and what happened was, you could see how the styles changed. It got to a point where I tried to be a little bit more classic and chic, and I did a kind of sort of Grace Kelly-ish sort of collections and things. So I was kind of, and doing this sort of, this was the next photo shoot I did, which is a little bit more sleek and I can't see the jewellery, but you know. But I was still doing sort of, well, you saw the fish, but I was also doing leaves and then that kind of thing. I guess it was about this point that at London fashion shows that some Japanese clients came and saw me, and they quite liked what I was doing. I think it was very English and had a slight sort of sense of humour. So I started selling in Japan, and actually for the first 15 years of my career, I had a very good business, but it was all export. I used to sell to the States and to Japan and to Europe, but I never did anything in the UK, which I really liked because it was like when I was back in the UK, it wasn't like I was at work when I was in the UK in some ways. It was really nice making things and sending it all abroad. So I'd go on trips to Japan and to America and be the sort of salesman and everything like that, and I could come back to a sort of quiet life in the UK. So yeah, this kind of work was getting very popular in Japan. I will just rattle through. Having got popular in Japan, I thought it was worth me doing some more export-based exhibitions. So I don't know when it was after a few years that I went and did a show in Paris called Premier Class, which is a sort of accessories show as part of Paris Fashion Week. And then I started doing New York Fashion Week, and then I did a special show, an exhibition show in Tokyo. So I ended up doing London, Paris, New York, Tokyo shows, and producing 2 collections a year, one for spring, summer, and one for autumn, winter. So I guess also my work, a lot of my work has an element of nostalgia in it. Hopefully it's not too kind of twee nostalgia, but this had a sort of slightly Victorian feel about it. This collection. I was also making tiaras, so I think quite a diverse. That's another photo shoot we did. And this is a rose wreath ring, which I think sort of looks like the sort of thing I might make today. It's quite well, it's impossible to wear because it catches on everything, but it's also quite detailed and fine, and the roses were really tiny. These roses, by the way, are probably 6 millimeters across, and that would be quite typical of how I would work. I actually cut out each petal and texture it and shape it up and solder it together. So I would be making, petals might be, small petals might be, a millimeter in diameter sort of thing. So yeah, hello. No. The key, I think, what I'd like the key signature to be in the work is the detail, and also there's a sort of. My dad was an architect, and there's a sort of kind of a honesty to the material. So actually, if I hand make the original in silver, it once it's cast, it looks like it's been handmade in silver more than if you. Certainly, if you carve in wax, you always have a slightly more chunky, a slightly more massive feel to the piece, always. Or if you model, or if you cast from found objects or whatever, they all have different feels. So I've always that's my signature, that I'm handmade from original. It's funny, my gold platers phoned up today in fits of laughter because they received a parcel, and in the package was a real bee, a real bumblebee, and someone said, "Could you please gold plate this for me?" Because they didn't want to get one of mine, and they thought that mine were obviously just, they must have thought the gold plating process was sort of dipping it in gold or something. So what I find is quite often when you're making things, if you were to just cast the real object, it wouldn't look like the real object. Often you have to make it, because you're making it perhaps on a different scale, and you're making it, people have to know what it is across a room. So often it's if you remake it, you can take shortcuts or use tricks and devices to make it look like what it's supposed to be in jewellery form. But no, I've never carved in wax, and lots of people do beautiful work carving in wax, but that's not my, I think it's very important for me to remember to know what I do and to stick with that, because other people do other things very well. So, yeah. So that is, so I've done kind of different things. These were much bigger. It was a much more sort of fashiony sort of range. I did these in an attempt to appeal more to the British market, because perhaps 10 years ago it was really, really difficult to sell tiny, nature-based, pretty sort of quirky jewellery. It was almost impossible in the UK. People just didn't want it. They didn't get it. Certainly in Japan and in Germany and in the States, particularly on the West Coast, it was very popular there. But in the UK, there just wasn't really a market for it. So I really sort of plugged on with what I was doing, and kept doing what I was doing, and trying to get it sort of in the press and get the message across to people. But it did take a long time. I suppose it's only probably sort of 5 or 6 years ago that my brand has been popular in the UK. But I haven't, I've been doing it for, this year's my 25th anniversary, so I've been doing it for 25 years. But, and I think now you'll see there's quite a big, there are certain sort of movements in jewellery, and the kind of nature-based theme for jewellery is much more popular now in the UK. So you see it coming from in some Topshop and Accessorize. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, do you ever follow what's going on in high street fashion? Do you follow what's going on in fashion?
Well, I think that's interesting because I think you must, just by virtue of the fact that if you're a designer, you're absorbing everything that's going on around you. But I don't like read fashion magazines or go to the fashion shows or go around London Fashion Week and look at the clothes.
Because obviously when I see for example, nightmares, for example, I don't see anything of them being trendy at the moment. So I'm just wondering how you manage to keep that popular and your brand to be so successful without even it doesn't seem like you're trying to follow the trend.
Well, I suppose in some ways you can slightly create the trend to a certain extent, and in other ways there's probably an element of luck. I mean, I'm sure there's a big element of luck if what you're doing and what you're good at is if you're in the right place at the right time, then it gets popular. And also, don't forget that actually what I'm good at is I'm good at sort of thinking of the story in the collection and what I want to do. And sort of, I think I'm quite good at thinking. No, at the moment I want to do something that's really fun, or now I want to do something that's very romantic or something like that. And I love making the little objects. But actually, I've got a really good team of people who and a lot of very fashionable young women who will give me a lot of input. So I think probably a lot of it comes from the team, and I do my bits well, but I get loads of help from other people. And also, of course, once you've been doing it for a while, it gets a bit easier because you get feedback. People say, people start saying, I want a really long chain, and then you go, oh yeah, right. So next collection, I do some much longer, bolder chains and that sort of thing. So it's a.
So you then have a collection according to what you feel and what you feel.
Yes, it's a combination. Yeah. I'll show you, for example, I've got the kind of example is my Japanese distributor wanted a piece for Christmas, right? So I did a sketch of with like 6 different. I'll pass these down in a minute. Different designs, and I said, "What? Which one do you want?" And so I had an idea for a theme. I wanted it to be the kind of theme I was after was that wintry theme where you see a bird on a branch. He's slightly puffed up his feathers, and often there's 2 or 3 of them sitting on a branch. You kind of think they're all sitting there going, So I had that sort of idea about it. So I did a selection of drawings, and the Japanese buyer came back to me and said they wanted one. And they said they also wanted some earrings sort of based on it, and could I change the thing for a diamond? So I get feedback from the customers as well, and so I've never, I've always gone, oh yeah, great, I'll give that a go, rather than saying, I'm the designer, who do you think are? So,
The idea for a collection doesn't come from trends in the fact.
no, but I think trends, I mean, for example, now we're in the middle of a really big recession. We've had a big recession for a long time, and you can't help but notice that in difficult times people tend to look back at a time fondly. So there's more retrospective looking, and you can see it in everything. You can see it in homeware and things that are on the telly and clothes we wear. So. And I knew that the Jubilee was happening, so I did a collection that was slightly sort of like, God blimey governor, God bless Britannia sort of collection, which was a bit retrospective. But then, we put the charms on some really long chains, and we did some things that just sort of make it a little bit more kind of fashionable, really. So it's a big combination between the 3. But you'll see that's passing back. That is the sketches, and then the suggestions from my buyer. So I suppose it's a bit, it comes a bit from everywhere, really. I mean, I'm a middle-aged bloke, so I'm not like really fashionable young woman who knows about everything. So that's why I think I rely more on some of the young people in the workshop to give me that. I can do what I do well, but they can give me the other bits that I need that I might not be so competent at. This slide I included because I've always thought, just because you make lots of something, it doesn't have to be. You don't have to compromise on the quality at all. So this is a grass blade ring. What I did was I cut out the shape of a blade of grass, and then I got a thin piece of steel wire, and I rolled it through the rolling mills with the steel wire to get the central ridge down it. And then I got lots of hair and laid it in lines and rolled it again to get the lines on it. So you can actually make something that looks almost more like grass than grass looks like. And then you can, if you cast it well and you work with your casters, you can cast hundreds of them and still have that incredible detail in it. So there's often a sort of people have this conception that if you're making any sort of volumes of something, it's going to be crap quality. But again, I've always thought that absolutely doesn't have to be the case. You can hand make in reasonably large batches and use casting and other techniques and really keep the fantastic detail in things. There's the grass again. I'm just sort of running through chronologically through collections. Some pieces are really popular, so instead of discontinuing them when the collection finishes, we put them into the classics collection, so they sort of stay for ages. I don't think we'd ever retire. The piece we're probably best known for now is our bee necklace, one of them over there, and that's so popular. It really looks nice still. So why would you? I'm not going to retire it. Sorry, I'm in the way again. I think there's there's another theme that I try and achieve in when designing jewellery, and in that the appreciation of the piece of jewellery should have a bit of a journey. So it's a bit like a nice wine or something. So you might see someone and you think, oh, that's a nice necklace, and then when you get close, you go, oh, look at the detail, and you'll go, oh, look at this, and so it sort of unfolds as you discover it. And then, particularly with something like a locket, you know, then you open it up and there's a little bird inside, and they go, it's kind of like got a little funny story behind it, and so the journey of appreciation continues. And I think, but the most important thing is when you get feedback from people that have bought and wear the jewellery, it sort of changes its it stops being mine, and they put their own story on it. So that may, you know, a piece may be, you know, we get all sorts of amazing stories, you know, like a loved one's died and they've been bought that as a remembrance, and it symbolises all these things. So the jewellery really takes on its own life after it's left me. And yes,
sorry, do you have any about your favourite pieces, or any that you can point out specifically?
Well, if you think now we do at least 2 collections twice a year, and then I do loads of exclusive collections for different shops and for magazines and for promotions and stuff like that. So, and supposing a collection of jewellery has 50 pieces in, that's 200 pieces of jewellery just in the new collections, and then probably another at least 50 or so special pieces. And we do lots of trunk show pieces, so we do individual one-off handmade pieces for sales and promotions and stuff. So you probably make like 500 brand new pieces of jewellery a year. And I don't, when I look back, I kind of think it's funny because some of them are very dated. But I don't think I would ever say I didn't like a piece. And at the time, the one you're making, that's where your heart is, so that's always the one that you really like and you're trying to work out and make it work. So no, I couldn't say that I have a favourite piece. I think I would view it very much as a body of work.
Get excited like when you know something's coming out?
Well, the buzz is if I have an idea. So recently, the Goring Hotel contacted me, and they wanted to do something collaborative. So they'd had the royal wedding there and everything, and what they wanted to do was reach a new audience, a little bit more sort of fashiony audience rather than you know, poshy, royal sort of people that, you know, and Condé Nast Traveller sort of thing. So it was a PR thing. They asked me if I'd design a piece of jewellery and do a menu for the tea, and we could then get press on it, and it would, you know, it would be read by a different group of people, and would give the hotel a new spring in its step. So I did a whole bunch of ideas for them, similar to that sheet that I passed back, you know, spread of ideas, and the one that I wanted to do was I wanted to do a shrimp. And when I was a kid, we used to go down to where the boats came in, or we'd go down and then we'd take our boat down to Harwich, and when the fishing boats came in, we'd buy like a big bucket of shrimps, and we'd come back home, and then we'd have a big pot of tea with white bread and butter and eat shrimps, and that was sort of like supper. We'd start at about 4 in the afternoon, and we'd stay there till the sun went down, eating shrimps and white bread and drinking gallons of tea. And it was just sort of what we did, and it was absolutely delicious. And I've got quite a collection of old cookbooks, and there's a lovely book by someone called Dorothy Hartley called Food in Britain. I think she went around in about the 20s or something like that. And she describes this thing called shrimp tea, which people do, and they sit and eat shrimps and drink tea. So I thought that would be a very PR-able story, and also because the Goring Hotel was trying to attract a different group of people, I thought the shrimp on a long chain was going to be a really good piece, a really nice piece to wear. But I went in and I tried to sort of push the shrimp, and all these blokes in grey suits kind of went, no, we want like a teapot or a teacup, you know. So we're going to have American tourists here, and our customer isn't going to like the shrimp. So I had to say, okay, I'll make your teapot, but will you allow me to make the shrimp and bring it back? And at the next meeting, can we have some women on the meeting, and can the PR company be there? And you know. So I made the teapot and I made the shrimp, and I went back in to the meeting, and there were some young women there, and some wives and girlfriends of the grey-suited money men. And they all, you know, the teapot didn't even go look at it, because like, here's the teapot, they were going, oh my God, it's the shrimp. So I've got the shrimp, here's the shrimp, and so they sort of rather reluctantly went for the, anyway, he'll be up front, went for the shrimp. And it got loads of press, and it's been really popular, and people have been going and having tea. So we've had sort of shrimp sandwiches, and you know, and it was a great success. So yeah, he's got little black pearls for eyes. Anyway, he's up here just for you to have a look at. So oh, what was your question? Yeah, so that, what it is like, I'm in a meeting and I think, I know what I want to do, and I get really excited. So making it at the bench was just, I just loved it. I absolutely loved it, and you could see it, because it's made from, you know, I start off with a big thick sheet of silver, and I cut it. And I made the first one, it just wasn't working, so you chuck that, I've got a box with all my readings, and you chuck it, drop in the box, and get another one. You know, and it's that sort of thing. I'm sure you get it sometimes. You know, anyone that makes, when it's going really well, you kind of lose track of time and everything, and you don't even eat. It's just like, oh, this is brilliant, you know. And as he sort of forms shape, I kind of get excited, and also I get really nervous, because I kind of think I'm going to jinx it, so I don't, won't show anyone anything. And then I did the eyes, and they weren't quite working, so I got these little black pearls, and I put them in. And he's like all goggly, and I was going, oh yes, it's so brilliant. And then you sort of come out of it, and then I look around the workshop, and everyone's just working away, and I think, oh my God, I've got something here, you know, I'm really pleased with it. So I kind of go, you know, like, oh, look at this, and then everyone, you know, luckily everyone went, oh my God, that's so lovely, and it's quite a lot of work involved, but you know, that's the thing, that's the moment, that's the buzz. It's like when you know you're onto something. And also it's slightly nicer when everyone else says don't do it, but you kind of know that it's right, and then it does come out right in the end. That's a real sort of lovely thing. Yeah.
So having to make 500 pieces a year, how do you always have ideas, and how do you deal with when, I don't know if it does happen to you, like if you do make something and I was like, oh.
Well, if I sell, we have complaints, we have people, you know, just the other day someone's, you know, very sadly someone's father died, and they were given a silver clover necklace, which was had some symbolism between her and her father, and she wrote really cross letters, you know, saying this cheap trinket and how awful it was and how it was offended, you know, she was really upset, but and she didn't like it at all, so you know, you've got to accept that some people just aren't going to like what you do, and I think I'm sort of old enough now to go, okay, yeah, that's fine. I mean, as long as, I think the trick is, when dealing with customers, you know, you just immediately give them money back, and you do whatever it takes to make them feel like they haven't been ripped off or taken advantage of, you know, and I think, so far as having ideas, I've got sketchbook after sketchbook, so I now should be working on spring summer 2013, because the next set of shows are going to be September, October, and I will be selling jewellery there that will go into the shops in January for spring summer 2013. So, and I need to design that now so that we can get it, you know, get the collection up and running and get the catalogues made and everything, price everything in time for September. So what will happen will be, I mean, I'm just so busy I don't get much time, but when I do get the first set of time, I will sit down with my sketchbook and I'll have, like, you know, complete apoplexy, and I'll get really depressed. I can't bloody do that, you know, I haven't got any idea. And I'll sit there for days after days, and then you know, like the sink will need bleaching, so I'll you know, get really busy, and then I go, oh God, another day's gone by, and I haven't done it. And but then I'll start doing some drawing, and I might, you know, something might happen. I might see a movie with something I like, or I go to an exhibition or something, and I think, oh, that could work, and then normally you have like 3 or 4 ideas start happening. And then the thing about ideas is that sometimes they don't kind of have legs. You know, you have an idea, you start working on it, but it just doesn't go anywhere. And other ideas, they just sort of blossom out, and you end up with masses of stuff. And you end up like thinking you could do 3 collections on it, you know. So then you put some of those in store for next season and things. So it's just, I suppose, designing jewellery is you just have to sit there and work at it, you know, slog at it, yeah. Yeah.
With regard to your finished pieces, how often do they resemble the idea that you had in the first place?
Yeah, I think that's quite elusive, really, isn't it?
You know, to commit to what you like.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, with it, I wait for a lot of time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you've got to go with it at some point, and I think. Well, you know, the bee is a popular piece, and that did everything that I wanted it to do, which is quite a sort of subtle thing. I suppose it's like, in some ways, it's like drawing a portrait of someone. You can get it to you know, all the lines in the right places, but it might not look anything like them. So to get it with the bee has quite a long story behind it, and the collection was called Original Sin. It was part of it was based on all sorts of things, but partly based on there was a Lucas Cranach exhibition, and if you remember, like the opening scenes of Desperate Housewives, there's that Cranach of Adam and Eve picking the orange, I think, and the serpent. But so I got into that, and I was sort of doing the things with apples and bites and serpents and that kind of stuff. And then there was an exhibition on with Lucas Cranach, and I saw that my favourite painting ever, which is the one Cupid complaining to Venus, and it has little Cupid with a honeycomb dripping down, and he's got bees all over him, and he's complaining that the bees are stinging him. So the bee very much represented, to me, and then also I researched it, very much represented the pain of you know, like you take the honey, you get the sting for it, the sort of this sort of bittersweet thing. So, and then at the same time as I was working through all this and doing the designing, my kids found a bee that wasn't well, so we put it in a matchbox and put, you know, some flowers in it and tried to nurse it back to health. And then also I collect insects, like dead insects. So I've got boxes and things all over the place. So I got one of those, and it all sort of fell into place. So I wanted the bee to be sort of quite sweet and quite pretty, but also, you know, they can sting you. So I wanted it to have some strength to it as well. So that was, you know, the piece itself is a bit heavier than I normally do. You know, so there was lots and lots of stuff. And basically, it's just a bee, and it looks quite nice on, and you know, people like it. But actually, there's a hugely long story and set of reasons as to why I made the bee and why I made the bee exactly as it is. And actually, the bee came out exactly. It did everything I wanted it to do, and that was after making several bees. That one really worked. So that's an example of something that did absolutely everything I wanted to do. I've got a contract with some book deal with a publisher. So I'm going to be, each chapter describes a piece and everything that goes on with it. So there's a chapter called The Bee. So actually, you know, I'm going to write a chapter of a book based on that one design. So there's a huge amount. I mean, you can either take it any way you want. Either it's a nice bee, which I'm perfectly happy, and other people buy it and they see different things in it. You know, to them it means something completely different. But to me, that's my story behind it. So I think that's what I was trying to say when what I try to do is make something that's attractive and wearable. But I hope that people can share the fact that there's something more behind it. It's not, you know, there's also something else behind it. So it's not just a pretty thing, which, you know, you might get a lovely, pretty, flowery thing in you know, Topshop or something like that. But what I try and do is give the pieces a little bit more oomph or something, you know, a little bit of extra something. Yeah.
How much do you consider the final selling price of the market that you're looking at?
Yeah. I don't, when I'm designing, I just design. Absolutely don't consider anything other than designing. And once I've designed, then we'll sit down with the things I made and we'll go, well, we can't, that's going to be too expensive, and we'll compromise at the end. I'd never like compromising at the beginning, because you can, if you imagine it's like a reverse pyramid, you know, and you go off like this, if you made a compromise at the beginning, you'd be so narrow, and it's much easier to compromise at the end. So, and actually now, after all this time, we've kind of worked out, we know our prices, so you can see something and go, well, that weighs about this much, and it's got a little, you know, 1mm diamond on it, so it's going to be about this much. The way I've pitched the pricing is obviously what you do when you make this jewelry is you cost it first. So you have an Excel program or whatever, and you cost everything in, and a price might come out at the end. But then, actually deciding what price you're going to sell it, you often need to compromise, because you may well have two pieces that one looks more expensive than the other. So you'll have to reduce one price and increase another price. So there's a lot of flexibility. But the important thing is that you need to cost it accurately, so you have a sort of roadmap from which to digress.
So, would you say that most of your pieces are in silver or gold or jewelry?
I like silver. So the bulk of what we do is silver. I make everything in silver. Silver is my material. But we do a lot more precious jewellery now. So we do a lot more 18 karat platinum and things. But that's not. If we have a bespoke commission, I'll typically make it in silver and we'll gold plate it. And then if the client likes it, we'll then reproduce it in 18 karat gold, because silver's my medium, you know, so that's what I use. And the great bulk, I mean, you know, we sell a lot of 18 karat beads, but they cost thousands. And what I want is, I want someone, you know, I know it's that things are tight at the moment, but I like the fact that perhaps a grandmother in Scotland can save up and buy her granddaughter a piece of jewellery for a 16th birthday. And so I hope that we can fit the prices in. I had a very sort of humbling time in Liberty, because when we do trunk shows or sales or things like that, I go into the store and actually do the selling. I think it's quite good to meet clients and find out what they're about. This woman came in and she hadn't been out for, it was before Christmas, she hadn't been out for 6 weeks, and every time that all her mates went out, she put the money that she would have spent in a jam jar. And after sort of 6 weeks, she had 150 quid, which was what she wanted to buy this piece of jewellery. So I thought, blimey, that's like, you know, that's quite humbling. But it's nice because, you know, it does make me feel that a lot of people can afford it if you're, you know, obviously it's well out of a lot of people's reach, but you know, it's realistic. I hope. Anyway, yeah.
Is everything that you made in England?
Sorry?
Is everything that you made
Yes.
in England?
It's now, I don't have any problem with making things overseas, because actually you get fantastic quality and you know, and great working conditions, and you know, it's a global market. Because we were mainly export, we still have a huge export market. For example, in Japan, I have it gives me a certain cachet if I say handmade in England. So actually, it's a sensible business decision for me to say handmade in England. And also, I love the industry and I love manufacturing. So it would take the heart out of what I do if things were made somewhere else. I love, you know, in my workshop. It's funny because you know you end up with a bead or a piece of jewellery, but in the workshop, if you have a bench and it's got sort of 30 or 40 pieces, or you know 50 shrimps all in production, with someone, you know, getting the first one and drilling holes, and then it's just fantastic. And actually, we can get the quality and have quality control. You can get things made really well overseas, but the point is that if something's not going right, we can see it then and there and put it right. We can be extremely flexible. So if a client says they want a shrimp, but they want it, you know, this changed or that changed. We can do it then and there, you know. And also we can do designs and adapt things for people. So it gives us a lot of strengths. I don't know to what extent we have competitors, but our strengths above other people is that we make it all in the UK, and we can do a lot of things that other people can't do. You know, if you did a fashion show, a good way to work is to have a collection of jewellery. You do a fashion show, you get all your orders, you combine them all together, send that bulk order out to China or wherever, and have that bulk order made and then have it shipped back. And it's a very cost-effective way. And if it was just the designing that you wanted to do, that would be brilliant, you know, great, and you get great quality and everything. But then, if a client says, oh, you know, could we have some of those with, could we change this, or could we have that a bit bigger, or if a magazine phones up and says, we're doing a shoot in, you know, Morocco, we want orange stones or something. You know, you have absolutely no flexibility, so they often find themselves quite restricted by doing that. So I'm committed to, I'm just working on a project with a high street shop, first time ever, where I'm going to design, and I'm going to put my name to the designs, and they'll be manufacturing overseas. But that won't be, it's like designed by me, it's not our business that are making it. So no, I'm absolutely committed to handmaking in the UK. That's from a purely sensible commercial decision, and I have absolutely nothing against manufacturing elsewhere. And the thing is, actually, like up in Birmingham, we use loads of service industry. You've just got these brilliant talents, you know, people that have been generations in business and in industry, and they're so good at what they do, and they're so helpful, and you know, I really love making in the UK. So it would definitely take the heart out of it all if we manufactured somewhere else. And we do, because we export so much, we do make we make a lot of jewellery. We sell around the world. We sell millions and millions of pounds worth of jewellery every year. So you know, we're making a lot. Each piece. I mean, I think the key thing that we do is some people look down the telescope the wrong way. What you have to remember is that each piece is going to be some incredibly important gift for someone's 21st or you know, an anniversary or something, and an individual, some person somewhere is going to open the box and go through it meticulously and think, oh, and hopefully they're going to love it. So you can't actually look at the jewellery as being 150 shrimps. You have to remember the importance of each piece, and that's the danger with batch producing things, is that people can forget that the whole point is that person choosing and buying and taking home and unwrapping and wearing it on the first night, wearing it out to a dinner party, and their friends saying, "Oh, is that a new necklace?" You know, that's what it's all about, really. Anyway, this is I do a lot of feathers, and I saw a feather somewhere. Yes. So that's quite typical, because I quite enjoy making things that like I was saying with the bee and things that actually look more like the real thing. If you you know, cast a feather or whatever, it wouldn't actually look much like a feather. So that's quite typical of me, is that I'll get my piercing, so I quite like piercing and engraving, so I'll spend hours and hours and hours cutting each sort of hair of the feather and engraving it exactly right and getting every little bit right. So, you know, the idea is to try and make a feather that sort of, you know, you're making it out of a hard material, but it actually looks soft and real. And that's for the ring. There's the bee. This was the bracelet from the original Sin collection. So it has apple blossom and passion flower and apple leaves, and so it's kind of like each little thing has some little part in the story. There's some swallows. This is the clover that I was telling you that a customer was so unhappy with. But what I liked about doing the Clover is, you know, I wanted to do a collection that was the kind of like good luck collection, so I had a series of good luck motifs. But the nice thing is, if you go out into the countryside, I think probably a lot of designers would look on the internet or something and go, here's a clover, and cut out a clover shape. And I was doing 4-leaf clovers, but if you actually go out into the countryside, and if you sit there like crack of dawn as the sun comes up, clovers, actually they sort of close themselves and they unfold, this sort of heart unfolds to the sun in the morning. It's just brilliant. So there was that story that I was trying to get, was this idea of the heart unfolding, which obviously has got lots of you know, nice meaning if you're giving a piece of jewellery as a sort of love token or something. So and then there was this lovely texture, so I spent ages using different papers and things, rolling the metal through the mill to try and get this nice texture on the inside of the fold. So, you know, there's that's kind of the fun thing, is trying to make something, is looking at something from a fresh, so starting with the original source material rather than looking at you know, other people have made clovers or other things. You know, if you go back to the original thing, there's some ladybirds with diamonds. There's some more feathers. We did some on a much longer chain. That's black ruthenium plated, which has a lovely iridescent. So I did a collection called The Peacock and the Crow that was based on a childhood story of how the animals got their colours, and the peacock and the crow, the kind of, all the paints were put in the forest, and they were all going to choose their colours the next day, but the peacock said to the crow, let's you and me nip up there tonight and we'll get the best colours and we'll be the most beautiful animals. So they nipped up there, and the peacock said, you do me first and then I'll do you. So the crow painted the peacock beautifully, and then the peacock turned around with a bucket of black paint and touched it over the crow and said, now I'm the most beautiful animal, you know. So the peacock has this sort of vanity. So there was a nice story behind it. And we used a bit more colour on this collection, but the crow collection had this lovely iridescent black ruthenium with little faceted black diamonds on it. There was so another way that I might make a collection was, I always loved that song, Daisy Daisy, give me an answer to do, I'm half crazy over the love you, yeah, and you know, it won't be a stylish marriage. So I made up a little, that was a slightly sort of offbeat collection, so I made up a little story about Daisy and her boyfriend going off for a picnic on their bicycles, and then sneaking off around the back for a bit of slap and tickle, and then all the sort of mice came and ate their picnics. And I didn't quite know where. Anyway, I sort of was off down a funny path. So I made little picnic baskets with mice inside, and these tandems and these bicycles and all sorts of funny things like that. I do a lot of. I'm asked a lot to do collaborative things. This was Kew Gardens. It was their 250th anniversary, so I made a collection of jewellery for them. This was the Victoria and Albert Museum when they reopened the jewellery galleries. They asked me to make a piece for that. So my fascination with Victoria and Albert was the fact that early paintings of Victoria she was actually quite pretty, and they were all sort of bright colours with roses, and she had pink cheeks. And after Albert died, most of them were sort of painted over black and made to look very sombre, but I actually found one. I had a friend who was in the army, and in his officer's mess they had a picture of young Victoria looking very pretty. So I used the sort of metaphor of lovebirds, you know, the two, in French they're called les inséparables, because they live together, and if one dies, the other one dies. And this sort of, the fact that she was slightly sort of caged in that relationship. So I used a lot of motifs from the V&A and did this caged stone set lovebird inside the locket. This was, can I? Okay, yes I can. This was for the sort of upmarket sex shop, Coca de Mer, and they wanted me to make, I had the most excruciating meeting where you have to sort of, I suppose it's like being a doctor, I had to keep a straight face, because they wanted to make nipple clamps. So I was in there with sort of 4 women, and we made these clamps, and they almost drew blood on the back of my knuckles, and they were all going, no, that wouldn't do it at all. And I was sitting with okay, I'll get some sprungless rings, you know. But again, that's quite fun because it adds a different angle to what we do, so I'll often, if I do something collaborative, it'll often be with, you know, the Goring Hotel was quite offbeat for me because I don't do that sort of, you know, that's not my territory normally. So now I have to travel quite a bit. So this is me in Japan. We do trunk shows in Japan. So I go and stand there and sell jewellery and sort of sign boxes and things like that for hours on end. I just got back. I got back about a week ago from Japan, and then I have press interviews. That's me wearing a suit. That's about once every 2 years I wear a suit. We, like I say, about 5 or 6 years ago, I decided to try and sell in the UK, and I gave much more of a push to this type of work that I'm doing. And we worked a lot on the press and things. What I did was I invested in my own business, and I got some sort of key members of staff in. And so it's a sort of a bit of a risk for me, and I turned it from being self-employed, I turned it into a limited company. And I got salespeople in and a manager and all this sort of stuff. And we needed more space, so I bought a little plot of land in London Bridge, and I worked with some super architects who were shortlisted for the Sterling Prize, and we built this lovely 6-storey building in London Bridge. It's tiny. It sounds grand. It's like a staircase with a cupboard off each floor. So we now have this super new space to work in. Because I try and be bench based. I haven't moved there yet because all my old tools and all my comfortable things are just where I want them to be in my old workshop. So I've stayed in the old place, and they've all moved off and lording it up. It actually still has. We had some problems with the planners, so the builders had to come back. So this is the architect's impression. It's actually still got scaffolding up, but we have a shop now, which is a nice new thing because we can actually talk to customers and get direct feedback. So it's another nice string to our bow. This is sort of like current collections. That's a chrysanthemum ring. This is all part of the chrysanthemum collection. That's me working on a bench. That ring you've seen. This was something I did for Ronan Keating's cancer charity for the Emeralds and Ivory. So it's an 18-carat ring that we did for donated for charity. Here's some examples of the sort of 18-carat things that we're doing. We do these because gold's so expensive. My designs lend myself quite well to it because things are quite light and fine. So the thing with gold is it just costs a fortune. So if you can make things nice and light, it makes it much more affordable. So these rings on the bottom are sort of set, and you can choose any ones you want and stack them up. And you can have, for example, 2 and then get another one next year or something. So they're little sort of sets of things we do that people can put together. That is. So, if I'll just run briefly through the way I work.